Oh my god, I'm so excited to see what all these new games are. I may have spoiled myself on Donkey Kong Jr. Math, but what awaits me in NES Online? Holy fuck. Holy fuck. Holy fuck. Holy fuck. Holy fuck. Holy fuck. My god, I can't wait to dive into all these. Okay, today I'd kind of like to just take a bit of a modern look at Nintendo Entertainment System, Nintendo Switch Online, because, you know, it's been like, what, since 2018, since this was finally introduced, and, you know, we could actually play NES games on our Nintendo Switch. Yes, it took a whole goddamn year for that to happen, my lord. When the Nintendo Switch launched in 2017, there was such, like, an exciting, electrifying feeling here, you know, playing these brand new games in the palm of your hands, you know, either on the TV or on the go. But there was always just this desire where I was like, man, I want to play all of the old stuff on the go. I think it was just really exciting, the fact that, like, hey, we had a console, you know, on the go, and we could actually play a lot of console stuff, you know, portably. The fact is, you know, Wii U games were being ported to Nintendo Switch. The Nintendo Switch could handle Wii U games, no problem. So this wasn't like a Nintendo 3DS situation where, you know, it was kind of like, hey, do you think the 3DS could run like a Nintendo 64 ROM? I mean, like, fans can make it happen, but is Nintendo not lazy enough to make that happen? Now, with the Nintendo Switch, there was no doubt that this thing could run every single generation of Nintendo prior. And to be able to play Wii U, Wii, GameCube, N64 games uncompromised on the go was just, oh my god, it sounded so delectable. And let me tell you, by 2018, we were fucking begging for Urban Champion at the very least. Let me tell you, in 2017, things were getting dire. I remember we were settling for like the Arcade Archives games. So like there's a company called Hamster that does the Arcade Archives line. You know, they make deals with a lot of these, you know, legendary game companies, you know, Namco, SNK, Konami, all of this stuff where, you know, they re-release all their arcade stuff and they handle the ports, all that. So, you know, it's a pretty sweet deal. And in 2017, they announced a partnership with Nintendo where on the Nintendo Switch, they were getting like, hey, a lot of the classic Nintendo arcade games, which really hadn't been re-released fully up to that point, which was pretty cool. But that way we got like the original Mario Brothers and Versus Super Mario Brothers. Yes, I remember this released in like December of 2017, and this was pretty much the only way we were gonna get something even slightly resembling an NES game playing on your Nintendo Switch. It was the NES game everybody wanted, you know, everybody just wanted to be able to blast through the original Super Mario Brothers on Nintendo Switch. And Versus Super Mario Brothers gives you like the experience, like, fine, like, you know, like it's different, but it's like close enough. Like the color palette's slightly different, and eventually, you know, they do have completely different levels based on like the original Japanese Mario 2 and whatnot. But for the most part, like, yeah, I remember playing this in like December of 2017 and January of 2018, just kind of just trying to get like something like classic Nintendo on the Switch. And I think everybody else is trying to do that too, because I remember this was at like the top of the eShop charts for a while there. And this was $8. Back on the Wii U, 3DS Wii, when they had Virtual Console, a normal NES game like Super Mario Brothers cost $5. So you were paying $8 just to get something, man. And this stunk ass because Nintendo previously announced, like right when the Nintendo Switch was fully revealed via like the Nintendo Switch presentation in January of 2017, they initially announced like, we have the Nintendo Switch Online service. We'll have NES and Super NES games with online multiplayer. And it's like, good deal, that's pretty cool. And then they didn't talk about it for like a year and a half after. I think actually in like the springtime of 2018, that's when we started to get like more concrete info. But that was only after it was delayed a full year. Nintendo Switch Online was meant to launch in the fall of 2017, but Nintendo was like, nah, we gotta delay it. So for the first like year and a half of this system's life, you just got free online multiplayer. And then randomly in September of 2018, they said, never mind. For $20 a year, you got the same exact service, but now you got a bunch of NES shit you don't care about. That was pretty much the deal Nintendo gave you. And in September of 2018, Nintendo Switch Online was pretty stupid, which is pretty crazy because years down the line, I think this is like one of the best services out there in gaming. For like 20 bucks a year, you get NES, Super NES, and Game Boy games, and like the library is vast across the board. And then for 50 bucks, you get N64 and GBA as well, in addition to Sega Genesis, and also like, you know, you get access to the Mario Kart 8 Deluxe DLC, Animal Crossing DLC, Splatoon 2 DLC. I think Nintendo Switch Online has proven its worth. But back in 2018, it's like, man, what are they doing? So when they announced details, they stopped mentioning Super NES games. They just said like, oh, we're just doing NES right now. And the selection at the start was like, I mean, it was fine. You had a lot of the games you needed to have there. You know, you had Mario 1 and 3, you had Zelda 1. Nintendo always did kind of like a weird thing with their virtual console releases back during the Wii U and 3DS days, where like they did like Mario World at the start of the Wii U Virtual Console, and then Mario 1 came like months down the line, and then they didn't do like A Link to the Past until like 2014. Like that, just off the rip, they did a lot of the ones that like, you know, you needed. You needed Donkey Kong, you needed the original Mario Brothers, you needed Zelda, Mario 1 and 3. They had a couple third-party games that I think were like, hey, these are some of the third-party games that, you know, you need in the NES lineup. You know, you have River City Ransom, that's a favorite of mine. The original Double Dragon. They also had Ghosts and Goblins. The initial lineup was fine. I mean, it was a lot of the black box bullshit that Nintendo always pushes to. You know, you had baseball on NES, you had soccer, like, I'm like, guys, come on. But there was a couple things that I really, really liked about NES Online as early as when it launched in September of 2018. Firstly, the emulation quality. These games look perfect. I love how they look here. The pixels are unbelievably crisp, the colors pop like wild. These games look exactly how I want them to look. It's very similar emulation quality to that of the NES Classic Edition, which was already a huge upgrade to the emulation quality like I was used to from NES games, officially from Nintendo. How NES games looked on Wii U should be illegal. Like, they looked bad, they looked really blurry and dark, and it also felt like there was like significant input lag. Like, I did not like that at all. They just weren't fun to play. Here, like, this feels good. Like, this all feels perfect. I also love that they gave you multiple suspend points. Back on the Wii U Virtual Console and the 3DS Virtual Console, you only had, like, one. NES Online, you have 4 across the board, which I think is massive. You also had some display options, so you have 4x3, which is usually my go-to, but you also have Pixel Perfect mode, which was a feature introduced on the new 3DS Super Nintendo Virtual Console, where the thing with Pixel Perfect mode is the games were originally developed with a different aspect ratio in mind than regular 4x3, so the way the game sprites should technically look is a little smaller, a little less stretched out than what you're probably used to. So, you know, they give you that option. And then you have a CRT filter for fucking Gremlins. I don't know. I just think this is kind of like what I don't need this. I like CRTs, like I like using CRTs, but they're a little more of a novelty for me. So, you know, I guess you use this filter for a novelty as well. This is kind of like if you just put like an aged film filter on like a movie you're watching. I'm like, yeah, it makes it look more like it's being projected in a movie theater, but like, just makes the game look worse. I don't know. But you know what was stupid as hell is the fact that like, they have all this shit on screen that you can't get rid of. So you had this giant bar at the bottom, which kept on telling you, oh, the minus button is select, the plus button is start, do ZLZR to do the suspend menu. It's just like, but you couldn't get rid of it. You couldn't get rid of this. You couldn't get rid of like these, like whatever, these bar effects or something. There's like this, like, you know, there's these circle effects on the bars or something. Still can't get rid of it. Can't get rid of your icon in the corner. Like, it's just kind of weird. Thankfully, eventually they put out an update where you can get rid of the little control bar at the bottom there just by going there. Which, you know, that's a start. I still just find it really weird that, like, yeah, there's, like, these weird effects on the side. I don't mind it. Like, it doesn't bother me. It's just really strange that, like, they give you absolutely no option to get rid of them. Like, there's absolutely no option to get rid of your little icon in the corner there. I don't get it. Now, I understand that being there for the online multiplayer portion, which I'll talk about, but the fact that, like, you just can't get rid of it, strange. But yeah, the online multiplayer part is really damn cool. Like, this is one of the coolest things they could have done. And it's done in a very smart way. I know that, like, there are fan things that have been built, you know, emulators on PC that have been built to do, like, this exact same thing throughout the years. But, you know, when they initially announced that they would be adding online multiplayer to NES games, I thought for a second that they would actually be going into the games themselves and doing something where, like, oh, they add, like, an online option to, like, Excite Bike or something. I don't know. No, instead, how it works is you go online and then your friend joins your room and then you have control of what game you're playing here. And then you jump into Rygar. And then, you know, your friend is watching your screen, and your friend is basically, like, plugged into the Player 2 port of the NES. So, you know, you're plugged into the Player 1 port, and they're plugged into the Player 2 port, and it's pretty much like an online version of that experience. You know, the games themselves have not changed at all. The way the app is built enables online multiplayer across all games. Even games that, you know, don't have multiplayer, you know, your friend can still join you online and watch you play, and they can do this little thing where, you know, they can control a cursor and give you a little claps. I remember back in September 2018, this online multiplayer did not work very well, but nowadays I think it works pretty fine. And to be honest, like, pretty much all of these NES games, like, I don't really care to play these ones online anyways. It's the other systems that I think are far more valuable, but I love that this option is available for the NES games, because, my lord, there are a lot of them now. Now, I wouldn't say this selection is necessarily on the same level as something like, you know, previous Virtual Console efforts. You know, you look at the list of NES games available on Wii Virtual Console, for example, and you have pretty much all of the heavy hitters there. But I think the difference is, you know, you have all of the Konami games, all of the Capcom games, and all of that. You know, Capcom isn't necessarily going to want to put, like, all 6 Mega Man games from the NES on NES Online, because they're already selling the Mega Man Legacy Collection on Switch, where, like, that, you know, like, they're just gonna want you to buy that. Same with Konami and the Castlevania games and the Contra games and all of that. So the selection here on NES Online is pretty much you get all of the major, like, Nintendo published NES games, a fair amount of, like, some third-party heavy hitters, and a lot of kind of more, like, cult classic, kind of like more hidden gem kind of NES games, or just weird garbage. But I think what's nice here is even if they add just some dog shit NES game, it's kind of like, well, you know what? I didn't buy it outright, so it's just like, why not? Like, this kind of feels a little more authentic to the NES library. Almost feels like something where it's like, this is just a collection of games you'd see at a game store or at somebody's house. Like, yeah, somebody is probably gonna have Eliminator Boat Duel for some reason. But you know what I really love here is the fact that Nintendo is really trying with the releases here. It doesn't really feel like how it did with, like, previous systems where they kind of just went for, like, the easy ones. You know, like, Nintendo never really re-released the original Tetris NES game because, like, oh man, it's too much licensing garbage. You got to go through, you know, the Tetris company and you got to do that. Like, no, with NES Online, yeah, they re-released Tetris on NES Online. They added to the Game Boy Online too. And hell, like, they even do stuff that, like, oh, with Nintendo 64, Nintendo Switch Online, you know, they have GoldenEye 007 releasing on there. You know, a movie license game that they had to go through a bunch of hoops to finally get re-released. They have Quest for Camelot for some goddamn reason on Game Boy, Nintendo Switch Online, just because that was, like, published by Nintendo back in the day. You know, that's a movie license game that, like, nobody remembers. It's not even good, but it's on there for some reason. And, you know, they're working with Microsoft to get a lot of the old Rare stuff, since Microsoft owns Rare and they, you know, they're a big part of gaming history, especially Nintendo's history. So, you know, we have stuff like Cobra Triangle on NES. You know, this says Xbox Game Studios on the publisher list because, you know, it's owned by Microsoft now. But I think Microsoft probably thinks it's just like, hey, you know, we can make some extra cash here. And, you know, why not? It gets our names out there a little more. There's not really a ton of Cobra Triangle fans that are going to go out of their way to buy an Xbox. You know, all these games are available in, like, Rare Replay on the Xbox One. So it's like, I feel like they probably look at this as, like, it's a good way to get, like, more appreciation towards these old games. And a lot of the audience for these games are going to be on, you know, Nintendo. So why not make a little bit of extra money instead of, like, holding these games hostage on Xbox? Because, like, the audience for these games probably isn't on Xbox. They're going to be on Nintendo Switch. I also like how they're doing a lot of Japanese only releases for the first time. You know, here we have Mystery Tower, which I believe this is a unique title screen. Like, this title screen is only really on Nintendo Switch Online. So it's like, did they create this title screen just for Nintendo Switch Online? Because the initial name was like Tower of Babel. So it's like, they went out of their way to like give this like its own branding here. This is custom box art. It's really weird. Like, it feels like they're really going above and beyond with a lot of this stuff. Nintendo Switch Online was the first time we got Joy Mech Fight, which was an NES fighting game published by Nintendo. We also got the mysterious Murasame Castle, which, has been kind of referenced in so many different ways throughout Nintendo's history. Most notably in Nintendo Land, where you have Takamaru's Ninja Castle as a minigame in that. But you also have like Takamaru appearing as like an assist trophy in Super Smash Brothers and whatnot. And they re-released the game for the first time in North America on the 3DS Virtual Console, not on the Wii U's for some reason. But yeah, here it is on Nintendo Switch Online, which is really cool. You know, like, it's not like this is like that hard for Nintendo to do. These are just NES ROMs at the end of the day. And also, like, let's say Mysterious Murasame Castle released only on the Japanese Nintendo Switch Online, which would be, the Famicom Nintendo Switch Online app. The Switch is region-free, so, you have to go through a couple of steps to download the Japanese eShop release of this, but you can do it. Anybody can do it. It's nothing crazy. But just the fact that a lot of these games are just fully available in the North American app is really cool, and I think it's important, I remember as a kid, playing a lot of Game Boy Advance games, like, specifically the Mario Advance series. I didn't realize those were old-ass games, but, I was getting a video game history lesson, and I didn't even know it. So I can imagine, like, a bunch of kids, like, potentially, like, they have Nintendo Switch Online to play Splatoon or whatever those wacky kids are doing, and then they see, oh, wow, I can download this app for free, and, you probably want to play, like, the original, Mario trilogy or something through this. Like, those are, always going to be fun. But even just going through all this, like, I would have loved this as a kid. I would have thought this was like so damn cool. And, I feel like there are still kids like that out there. I pray. I really pray that some kids think old shit is still kind of cool. And even then, I'm getting kind of over a lot of NES stuff because, like, they've re-released this stuff into oblivion at this point. So it's like, I'm a little tired of it. But hey, I think the way they're doing this is still kind of cool. Oh, hey, we got Earthbound Beginnings. That was originally released on the Wii U Virtual Console, for the first time available. It's here. It's just here on Nintendo Switch Online. The NES stuff, I think they've kind of like milked this for all it's worth. Nintendo kind of did with this one big update in like the summer of 2024, where they pretty much just pushed out all of like their Nintendo published stuff, which was just a bunch of random black box NES games that like nobody really cared about, but it was still kind of like, it was still weird that like they hadn't entered the service yet. So they pushed out like 7 NES games randomly, and it just kind of felt like they were really just like going like, all right, let's just get this over with. There's still a few more they do, they're not done with this service at all. But yeah, it does kind of feel like this is basically more or less what the selection is at this point. Weird as hell, it took like years to get the original Golf on NES, especially considering this game was technically included with the Nintendo Switch. There was like an Easter egg, which I believe was like a full-on tribute to Satoru Iwata, where if you used the IR camera here to do kind of like this, Nintendo Direct directly to you motion in front of it, it would unlock the original Golf on NES, which was one of the first games Iwata worked on, which was like a really cool little Easter egg. And then Nintendo removed it. And I'm like, why? And then they didn't make it officially available on the system until like 2024. So it's just like, okay, it's here at least, but still. They kind of stopped doing these like special versions, didn't they? Where like, these are kind of interesting. They're kind of like save states later on in the game, so then you don't have to play through the whole thing. It's like with Metroid, you just got a great head start on your mission to defeat Mother Brain. In this version of Metroid, every power-up, including all Power Suit weapons and abilities, is available from the start. So this is pretty much like a save state in the game where you have all your upgrades, so if you never got far in Metroid, you can still kind of experience like a later point in the game, which I think is kind of cool. I kind of wish that they'll eventually do an update where you can kind of like hide the special versions, because they do kind of clog up the inventory here. But still, that's a minor nitpick. I mean, overall, I think the selection here is pretty cool. I think most major NES games that I really want to play are available on Nintendo Switch in some way. You know, you have the Mega Man collections, Castlevania Contra, those are all available, and Nintendo Switch Online is mainly for all the Nintendo stuff and a lot of extra things here and there. And they introduced these weird bastards. For 60 bucks, you can get these weird-ass Joy-Con controllers where you can play the NES games like actual NES games. And the fact these work across like the whole Nintendo Switch UI and system, like, you know, you can play pretty much any Nintendo Switch game with these as long as, you know, you can use like just BA, start and select, and a D-pad with them. It's definitely kind of weird that, you know, they put the Joy-Con rails on these things. Also, how there's like absolutely no home button on these. They fixed that with the Nintendo 64 Nintendo Switch Online controller. My God, could you imagine those with Joy-Con rails? That would be an immediate threat to public health. But these kind of represent just a really cool dedication to the legacy content on Nintendo Switch Online Nintendo has. You know, it took a while to get to this point. At the start, Nintendo Switch Online NES games, it was pretty pathetic. But as time has gone on, I really appreciate this service. I think it's more than worth the money, especially considering you get like a lot more systems with this service at this point. But even the NES games on their own, I think there is a lot here, and I love that Nintendo seems dedicated to just doing more out-of-the-box things rather than just what's expected of them. I think it's really cool that they got Crystalis on NES by SNK. They also got Double Dragon 1 and 2 included on the service. All these Japanese games. Fire and Ice, that's like a very obscure hidden gem, but it's really damn cool, and it's like an NES game that ages well. Wow, who would have thought? Journey to Silius, that's a massive one. That is such a cool game. The original Nightshade, that's really funny. You know, Ninja Gaiden. There is just so much stuff here. The fact that, you know, we're getting rare games, that's awesome. You know, versus Excitebike, just all these things that, you know, I just think it's so damn cool how dedicated they are to giving us like more unique experiences rather than just, you know, what we expect from Nintendo re-releasing old games. You know, it extends farther to their other systems where, you know, the SNES Nintendo Switch Online, you know, they re-released Stunt Race FX for the first time. They never re-released that before, but they did it on Nintendo Switch Online, and they're doing movie licensed games. They're doing titles that are a little harder for them to get, you know, there might be a little more paperwork involved. I felt like previous Nintendo Virtual Console, you know, re-releases of legacy software, they would never touch that stuff. Now, it genuinely feels like anything's on the table, and that is awesome. But hey, you know what else is awesome? The fact that I'm redoing this video. I originally made this video back like 2 years ago to release with the Scott the Woz Collectible Trading Cards Series 1. And as I made the videos that released via those trading cards available to the public, I looked at my Judging NES Online video and I realized this might be a little dated. So if you're down for some dated content, what you're about to see is Scott from 2022 talking about the exact same goddamn topic. Who knows, I might say something a little different. I might repeat myself word for word. There's only one way to find out. Enjoy. Everybody's favorite. It's hard to think of a bigger punching bag on the Nintendo Switch than Nintendo Switch Online. This thing was completely free for like the first year and a half the system was available. Playing online multiplayer was completely free of charge. You could play Splatoon 2, ARMS, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe for as long as you want, for as free as you want, until around September of 2018. And they were originally planning to make online multiplayer paid for like around the fall of 2017, but they delayed it a year. I still don't understand why, but they did, and they detailed how Nintendo Switch Online was going to be $20 a year and include, you know, online multiplayer, something that, you know, we were getting for free for that entire year and a half. So, you know, like that, you're not really selling me on this yet, but Nintendo had an ace up their sleeve. It was to offer NES games. Are you not impressed? Yeah, people weren't too happy with this, mainly because like, oh man, I have to spend $20 a year to play Splatoon 2 online, and your reason for the price increase is just because you put Balloon Fight on Switch. Yeah, I always kind of looked at this as Nintendo didn't really want to do much work to make their online multiplayer worth a damn. Like, they didn't really want to invest into like actual like servers and all that stuff, and instead they were like, okay, well, we're just gonna put online multiplayer into like our retro game subscription. And I think the reasoning for that is to kind of get, you know, the modern gamers and the retro gamers to kind of come together. You know, people who only give a damn about playing Urban Champion, well, they'll buy Nintendo Switch Online to play that, but that might incentivize them to dip their toe into the online multiplayer games like Smash Brothers Ultimate and Splatoon 2 and ARMS. And the same goes for the online multiplayer gamers, people who are only interested in playing Splatoon. They might dip their toes into the NES Online and learn why people don't give a damn about NES Tennis. Maybe that's why they did this. Maybe they just wanted to create one big subscription service. I don't know. I think it's kind of a flawed mentality. You know, it's something where the online multiplayer people, they're kind of upset because now they're paying for online multiplayer and it's not better than what it was before they had to start paying for it. And they get all these NES games that they don't care about. And then all the retro gamers, well, they don't really like subscription services. So it's just like, well, damn, you're not pleasing anybody here. But ever since its launch in 2018, I think Nintendo's done a pretty serviceable job of kind of inching up to making Nintendo Switch Online worth the $20 a year. I mean, they added more systems in the form of Super Nintendo and eventually N64 and Sega Genesis, a part of the expansion pack, which, you know, isn't a part of the $20 tier, but, you know, I digress. But I want to take a look at the NES Online app and kind of just see, like, where it's at and just see, hey, how does this feel as a subscription service for retro Nintendo games? So let's take a look. So I'm taking a look at this in late September of 2022. And yeah, especially compared to the original launch in September of 2018, yeah, this is a fair amount better. We have most of the main Nintendo games that you'd want, you know, like the Marios, the Zeldas, Metroid, Kid Icarus, even all the ones that you don't care about, like volleyball. But there are a couple things missing that is just like, you know, these are Nintendo-owned properties, Nintendo-owned games, Nintendo-developed games that, you know, they may not be the best, but it's just like, you didn't care about putting volleyball on here, so why not put on those? Like, they just very recently added pinball to the service. Like, I think they just have a couple of these garbage games. I mean, pinball isn't a garbage game, it's just kind of mediocre, but still, you know, like, they just have a couple of these old school black box games just waiting to release just for a rainy day. They're just like, we know nobody cares about these, but we're just gonna save them until, like, it's just like, oh, damn, okay, fine, it's time to put out pinball. Like, they waited a while to put out, like, Donkey Kong 3 of all games. So, you know, I think they're kind of saving a couple just for when it's kind of been like, oh man, we haven't put out an NES game in a while, so sure. But there's quite a few games that are kind of like, damn, like, you got these out of nowhere, where it's just like, you got Double Dragon 1 and 2. They got Fire and Ice, which is just a cult classic puzzle platformer game. You even have a couple games from third parties like Gradius and Ghosts and Goblins from Capcom and Konami. You have The Immortal, which was originally by Electronic Arts. Now it's owned by Pico Interactive, but still. Kung Fu Heroes, I remember playing that as a kid. Mappy Land, Mario Brothers. There's quite a few games here and a good selection of like NES classics. However, there's a lot of junk. First off, I'd say a big thing that just clutters this whole thing are the special games. So the idea behind these I'm not actually fully against. What these are pretty much save states at certain parts in these old school games, so then you can kind of play them in a bit of a different way, or in a way where it would be hard to get to that point for newcomers, or even if you played the game before. You know, it's just nice to have a version of this game where, you know, you can just jump right in and you can get an experience like further in the adventure, especially for the longer games. So one that I know of specifically would be Dr. Mario. This kind of shows what it's like to play the game after beating level 20, which is, you know, the hardest difficulty you can select at first. And it shows a cutscene that, you know, not many people know about, because not many people were able to get that far. So they kind of set you up to beat this area pretty easily. And then when you get there, it shows you this cutscene that, like, not many people have seen, because, you know, level 20 at high speed is pretty damn hard. But then when you go past it, damn, level 21. So it's kind of just, yeah, I'm not going to be able to do that. But it's an ability to play some games in a form that is kind of hard to get to that point. And it also gives you the ability to see games that are definitely a little harder, or, you know, not many younger gamers have been able to experience that late in the game, or with like max power-ups or max stats or any of that. So it's just like Metroid has 2 special versions. This one says, in this version of Metroid, you start at the battle against Ridley. Our hero Samus has all of her equipment, including the Ice Beam upgrade for her weapon. So it's pretty much just a save state right at Ridley. And then this special version, you just got a great head start on your mission to defeat Mother Brain. In this version of Metroid, every power-up, including all power suit weapons and abilities, is available from the start. So yeah, these are kind of cool to have, so then you can kind of experience a game in a different way that you never experienced before because the game's too hard or too old to really sink your teeth into. But my God, is there any other way they could put these in this app without clogging up the damn library screen? Like, man, these things are everywhere. Like 3 damn versions of Metroid, one after another. I think they're cool to be here, but I mean, damn, kind of come up with a better way to do it. Outside of that, the overall game selection, it's okay to pretty good. There's a lot of great games here, but there's also a lot of questionable games. I mean, Eliminator Boat Duel. Many of these kind of feel like they went to some of the cheaper third parties to get games from them. This kind of feels like a mishmash of Nintendo classics, some legitimate third-party classics, and then the games that are kind of the easy ones for anybody to get. So you know about like those third-party little plug-in-and-play consoles from like At Games or Retrobit, like the Retrobit Generations or the At Games Legends Flashback console or all of that, where they kind of get these games from like third parties that, you know, are older, like Data East or Pico Interactive, like we saw with the Immortal on NES. You know, sometimes they'll have Capcom games, but they always have, like, whenever they say, oh, we got Capcom games, it's always fucking Ghosts and Goblins. That's kind of what the selection of games feels like on here, where they just kind of got the games that were pretty cheap to get. Just easy to license, easy to get. Like, I don't know why else you'd put the Immortal on NES on here. I don't know why else you'd put City Connection or Eliminator Boat Duel. Sure, these can be considered like retro classics, cult hits, all that. But when you have those, but not more games from Konami or Capcom, it just kind of obviously shows that Capcom and Konami would very obviously rather put out their own games via like collections and re-releases on the Nintendo eShop rather than license these games for the Nintendo Switch Online app, where Jolico, I don't really think they're gonna make much money off of a City Connection re-release on the eShop. I think that shows the problem with going in the subscription services route for the retro game re-releases on Nintendo systems, from Nintendo specifically. You know, it makes it harder to get a bunch of different games on this service. And I like this service. I think the emulation on these games is really damn good. These games feel great. They look better than ever. And the fact that you can play these online is a damn treat. I mean, like, I don't really play NES games online much because, like, how many NES games have multiplayer that's worth playing online? But the fact that the option is there is wonderful. But it just kind of shows, you know, that whole, like, be careful what you wish for. And if you do like something, you know, support it when it's out. You know, don't just wait until it's too late. You know, back during the Wii U era, when Nintendo was putting out virtual console titles and they were kind of just trickling them out, doing like 1 or 2 a week sometimes, or 1 or 2 every 2 weeks, and it was kind of the same stuff we got from the Wii Virtual Console. People weren't supporting it, you know, the numbers didn't lie. People just weren't really buying Virtual Console games, and most people kind of suggested, like, hey, just do a damn Netflix subscription. Do like a Club Nintendo Premium subscription where you just have all these NES games just available at a moment's notice. It's just like Netflix. I just go in there and I just play the games whenever I want. You know, I don't have to keep buying all these games. I just get one big app that I can just open and just go into, and I can just play all these games. Well, you got that, so stop bitching. I am partially kidding there because both ways Nintendo did things obviously had some issues. You know, the Wii U Virtual Console, they were re-releasing games that were already re-released on the Wii Shop channel, so they weren't exciting. It was like they were trying to make a big deal about Super Mario Bros. 3 releasing on the Wii U Virtual Console. It's just like, we already went through this. Like, damn, shut up. And on top of that, the quality of the emulation wasn't good. Like, the games looked bad. They were dark, blurry. They didn't feel good to play. Like, it felt like, just control-wise, it just felt bad. Like, it felt like there was substantial input lag in those emulated NES games on Wii U. Whereas now, the emulation on Nintendo Switch Online, Nintendo Entertainment System, is damn good. These games feel and look phenomenal. And we do get the subscription service where, we don't have to worry whenever Nintendo announces, hey, we got new NES games coming to Nintendo Switch Online. It's not a matter of like, oh, God, I don't want that one. It's a matter of like, you just don't really care to play it. But it doesn't matter because it's you're not paying any more for for Donkey Kong 3. They're just throwing it onto the service you're already paying for. So it feels kind of weird whenever Nintendo announces new games for this service and you see everybody going, it's just like, oh no, I don't want that. Or it's just like, I feel like we're already kind of getting our money's worth out of this. Combining the NES and SNES libraries on Nintendo Switch Online, I think that's more than worth $20 a year. Getting pinball is just like, that's just cherry on top right there. I think one of the problems with Nintendo Switch Online is the fact that, we're getting more than our money's worth out of these retro game libraries for only $20 a year. But like that's not what the service is named after. The service is named after the online multiplayer component. So it's just like, it just kind of feels like, I buy a power drill and you just throw a bunch of shit in the box that equates to more than a power drill's worth of money. And I'm gonna be like, well, yeah, I got my money's worth, but I wanted a damn power drill. That's what Nintendo Switch Online feels like most of the time. And while Nintendo is definitely getting a lot better at online multiplayer, many of their games are much, much better in online infrastructure and lobby system, blah, 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 blah. They're getting better at it. But I feel like initially they were kind of like hiding the fact that their online multiplayer kind of stunk by just giving you a bunch of their legacy content as a part of your online multiplayer subscription. And you know what? It makes it kind of worth it, at least now. Back in the day when it initially launched, you got the Mario games, you got Zelda, so it's just like, okay, those are good, but it's just like, outside of that, like, they kind of just launched NES Online with a bunch of the black box games, and like, what, fucking pro wrestling? But one thing that I really like about the games that they've added a lot of like these cult classic games that are kind of more so kind of like hidden gems in the NES library. Games like Chrysalis on the NES, and like I mentioned, Fire and Ice. You also have Journey to Silius, and then you also have Vice Project Doom. There's a lot of games that are like, these are kind of like more underground good NES games that not many people know about, and it's really cool that they're here. And then in addition, Nintendo's actually added a bunch of games from the Famicom where you get Super Mario Bros. The Lost Levels. That's nothing new that it's getting re-released, but still cool to have. And then Versus Excite Bike, which was only released in Japan. Really cool that that's here, even though that released on the Wii U Virtual Console, but still, it's good that even though this has been re-released before, that they're continuing the tradition and re-releasing old games that never initially left Japan. You also have that's a Famicom game. This is also a Famicom game, so they're doing some cool stuff with that. And also, we do have Earthbound Beginnings. With one of the stupidest looking custom box arts I've ever seen. I never had like official NES box art, so that's Nintendo's interpretation of Earthbound Beginnings NES box art. Why? I do enjoy having the access to all these NES games without having the need to actually buy them. However, I would like the option to. I think that would be a great option to have, because eventually one day these games are not going to be on this service. I feel like some third-party games may be pulled from the service eventually because their license will expire, and it's like, how much is it really killing Nintendo to keep Star Soldier on NES Online, So eventually I do feel like some games are gonna start getting pulled here, and it's just a situation where I'm like, I would like the ability to just like go through each of these games and like buy them for like, you know, $5 or hopefully less, but buy them and then they download officially on the system, so then they aren't dependent on an internet connection. And these games aren't dependent on an internet connection most of the time, but I believe there's like an online check-in every like couple of days or week or something like that. I forget what it is, but like it requires like an internet check-in every now and then, but not most of the time. So, you know, that's cool that it doesn't need an internet check-in like every single time, but eventually that internet check-in ain't gonna work. You know, that's gonna be years down the line, but still. But overall, how do I rank Nintendo Switch Online, Nintendo Entertainment System in September of 2022? It's okay. NES on Virtual Console definitely had more options, and it kind of hit most of the notes that you'd want it to hit. It had pretty much all the mainstays, where this has a lot of the mainstays, some fucking weird ones too. But it does almost kind of feel like a selection that people would maybe have back in the day. You know, kids might have this collection of like, you know, like some of the big titles like the Marios, Zeldas, Donkey Kong, but then they might have a Crystalis, they might have an Immortal, they might have Kung Fu Heroes or Mappy Land. They just have all these random games, and you know, I think it might be a little more indicative of like an actual NES collection. But, you know, it's still kind of lame that we don't get, you know, more Ninja Gaidens. We don't have Star Tropics 2. We just have Star Tropics 1. We don't have all the black box NES games. For some reason, Nintendo launched the damn service with basically nothing but black box games. And now they don't even give us Urban Champion. Like, come on, don't be cowards. I'll say NES Online is not very exciting. Now, that might be because it's the NES in 2022, and I think we've had our time to be nostalgic over it, and by now it's kind of like, all right, we've already had these games re-released on damn near everything for the past 20 years. It's no longer that exciting to get Mario 3 on a Nintendo system. It's kind of just damn near expected at this point. So, yeah, that might be adding to the feeling of, yeah, this isn't that exciting. But overall, this isn't half bad. I will give it probably around like a 7.5 out of 10. 7.6 if we get Power Punch 2.